You loosen and call the pause safety. You finally exhale, and that is when the trap starts writing itself into your body. The argument ends, the room softens, the message stops, the pressure drops, and you call that drop peace. By the end of this, you will be able to tell the difference between real safety and the kind of relief that trains you to stay inside the thing that hurts you. You are living with a nervous system that can be bribed. It does not always get bribed with pleasure. Sometimes it gets bribed with the sudden absence of pain. You know this feeling. You brace for impact, nothing lands, and your chest opens just enough for gratitude to sneak in where judgment should have stayed. That is why some of the worst arrangements in your life did not survive by giving you joy. They survived by giving you breaks, not good treatment, just pauses, not respect, just intervals where the damage stopped long enough for you to confuse recovery with trust. You see it in small rooms before you see it in large decisions. A conversation turns sharp, then suddenly gentle. A demand becomes a joke. A cold face becomes a warm voice. Your shoulders drop. You tell yourself maybe you overreacted. Maybe it is getting better. Maybe this is what progress feels like, but your body is not reading progress. It is reading interruption. You can watch the trap start there. Pain spikes, relief arrives, and relief gets promoted into proof. You stop asking whether the source is safe and start thanking it for letting you breathe. That is how people stay inside conditions they would have rejected if they had met them at full volume on day one. You learn it early. The hallway goes quiet after shouting. A door stays closed. Footsteps pass. Nothing happens. Relief floods the body so hard it almost feels like love. Nobody has to teach the lesson out loud. The lesson is chemical. Survival starts worshipping the pause. You meet the same mechanism again in adult clothes. The friend who goes cold and then suddenly acts tender. The group that humiliates you and then pulls you back in with warmth. The institution that starves you for weeks and then calls one concession care. Your whole system leans toward the person or structure that ended the pressure, even when it was the same person or structure that created it. Your body treats relief as the cheapest counterfeit of safety because it arrives with evidence. Your pulse slows, your jaw unclenches, you sleep for a few hours. The body thinks a gate opened, but a prison can feel merciful the moment the noise stops. A cage does not become a home because the hand on the latch relaxed. This is one of the quietest ways you betray yourself. You do not usually surrender in the moment of pain. You surrender in the moment after pain, when your standards are exhausted and your gratitude is chemically inflated. The danger is not just that you forgive too fast. The danger is that you start measuring goodness by how bad it could have been. The opening sign is not chaos. It is contrast. You get hit with pressure, withdrawal, correction, silence, or confusion. Then the pressure lifts just enough to make the lift feel sacred. A text finally arrives. A face softens. A rule gets bent for you after being used against you. And because your body has been held under, a normal breath feels like rescue. You have lived this in stupidly ordinary moments. You check your phone after rehearsing 10 possible disasters. The answer is neutral, not kind, not accountable, just neutral. Still, your stomach drops with relief. You hate how quickly you become thankful for the bare minimum, but you take the feeling anyway because your body wants the storm to be over more than your mind wants the truth. You are not weak for this. It is conditioning. Intermittent pain and intermittent ease train deeper than steady discomfort because they keep hope alive. A steady wound teaches avoidance. A wound that sometimes closes teaches attachment. It keeps you invested in the source because you become addicted to the return of air. You can see memory blur arrive next. Relief edits the record. It does not erase what happened, but it thins the edge. The moment calm returns, Your mind starts revising the scene to match the lower tension in your body. Maybe it was not that bad. Maybe they did not mean it. Maybe you were tired. Maybe the room was strange. Maybe the tone got lost. Relief does not just relax you, it negotiates against your own witness. Watch what happens after a rough exchange that suddenly turns normal. You pour water. You sit down. Somebody speaks in a lighter voice. Your hands stop shaking. 10 minutes later, you are already narrating the event from farther away, as if it happened to a less reliable version of you. The body has left the emergency, so the mind starts embarrassing the person who was in it. You do not get false loyalty through total domination. You get it through repeated cycles that make your own perception look dramatic the moment the pressure passes. You start apologizing for your alarm because you cannot stay emotionally synced with the version of you that was hurt. Relief creates distance between the witness and the judge usually sides with the karma room. You hear this called being reasonable. Institutions call it resilience. Families call it keeping the peace. Entire cultures train you to admire the person who can return to normal fastest, but sometimes your speed of normalization is not strength. It is evidence that your warning system has learned to serve the environment instead of serving you. You were lied to by a lot of maturity talk. They told you calmness proves wisdom. They did not tell you calmness can also be submission with better posture. They told you that if you can move on quickly, you are strong. They did not tell you that moving on too quickly can become the way your body abandons the truth to stay functional. Then gratitude inflation follows. Relief makes you overpay. After pressure stops, you hand out trust, patience, access, and interpretation that were never earned. Someone stops interrupting you for one evening and you call them changed. A room lets you finish a sentence and you call it respect. A system gives back 1 inch of dignity and you start defending it like it saved you. You become loyal to conditions that only paused their abuse this way. They remember the pause with more heat than they remember the pattern with accuracy. A single soft moment glows brighter than 10 hard ones because the body stores relief like water in a drought. The lower your reserves, the more sacred the smallest allowance begins to feel. You miss the next turn because the mechanism does not only keep you attached to harmful people, it teaches you to run it on yourself. You know this scene. You push through a week you should not have survived on discipline alone. You silence hunger, anger, fatigue, doubt, and grief because there is something to finish and no room to collapse. Then you finally allow yourself one quiet night, one meal without multitasking, one walk without proving anything. Your throat loosens, your eyes sting for no reason. And instead of asking why basic restoration felt illegal, you congratulate yourself for needing so little. That is the middle of the trap. You become grateful to yourself for stopping the harm you were inflicting on yourself. Your own deprivation creates the relief, and then your own relief gets mistaken for evidence that the system works. So you keep the system, you call it discipline. You call it standards, you call it ambition, but your body knows the truth. It only feels safe when the internal supervisor takes a smoke break. You can miss damage for years if it never looks theatrical. If the punishment sounds like responsibility and the relief sounds like reward, the trap can run for years. You will not think you are living under strain. You will think you are earning your rest. You will think your body is the problem because it keeps asking for rights that your internal regime classifies as bonuses. Where relief gets confused with safety, you start organizing life around the next permission slip. You do not ask what is stable. You ask what will let you breathe for an hour. You do not choose what honors you. You choose what reduces immediate friction. That is how sharp people end up loyal to jobs, groups, beliefs, and routines that only look tolerable at the exact moment the pressure briefly dips. Look at the social cost. When your standards are built on relief instead of safety, anyone who gives you clean steadiness can feel unreal. You distrust ordinary care because it does not come with the dramatic drop your body learned to call love. Consistent people feel flat. Calm rooms feel boring. Predictable respect feels suspicious because there is no spike, no crash, no holy moment of release. The body that grew around contrast often mistakes peace for emptiness. That confusion ruins judgment. You start giving depth to volatility and calling consistency shallow. You start feeling loyal to people who make you earn ease and restless around people who offer it without spectacle. The old chemistry keeps trying to recruit you back into familiar turbulence because turbulence gave you relief hits, and relief hits felt like intimacy. You should know why this mechanism hides so well. Relief feels intelligent. The body stops sounding the alarm, so the mind assumes it has learned something true. But a smoke detector going silent does not prove the building is safe. It only proves the noise stopped. Your organism loves certainty, and relief pretends to be certainty because it arrives as immediate contrast. That is why a person can walk straight back into the same pattern with their eyes open and still believe they are making a thoughtful choice. You can watch the loyalty form in public. A group freezes you out for days, then waves you back in with one ordinary laugh. Suddenly, you are smiling harder than anyone in the room. You become extra easy, extra grateful, extra available. Not because the room earned new trust, because your body is paying tribute to the end of social threat. The warmth feels expensive because the cold was engineered to make it feel rare. You hear the same overpayment in moral language. You tell yourself it is noble to see the good in people. You tell yourself it is evolved to recover quickly. You tell yourself bitterness is uglier than naivety. Beneath all of that is usually one simpler fact. You do not want to return to the pain of seeing clearly, so you purchase comfort by downgrading the evidence. You can feel the shame in both directions. During the pressure, you feel small because you are under it. During the relief, you feel weak because you can feel yourself becoming grateful too cheaply. You hear your own tone get softer. You watch yourself accept less. You watch your standards kneel in real time. And then a second shame arrives because now you also have to explain why you stayed once the room became breathable again. You can watch identity drift begin here. When relief becomes the main reward in your life, your character starts reorganizing around toleration. You become the one who can handle difficult people. The one who can take a hit and still function. The one who does not need much. The one who can reset fast. From the outside, this can look impressive. From the inside, it often feels like disappearing a little more each year. You may even harden around it until danger gets rebranded as proof of purpose. You start selecting environments that let you perform endurance. You feel most real where your tolerance can be displayed. You become suspicious of places that do not demand over-adjustment because they do not give you your old heroic role. The self starts feeding on the very instability that keeps it thin. You need shadow work here more than optimism. Part of you may enjoy being the person who can survive what breaks others. Part of you may protect the pattern because it gives you an identity made of stamina. Part of you may even resent genuinely safe conditions because they do not let you feel superior through suffering. If you never admit that, you will keep decorating the trap with noble language and calling the decoration character. You can spot this in the body before you can explain it in words. In harmful cycles, relief does not make you broader. It makes you collapse. You go limp, sleepy, hungry, foggy, overforgiving. In actual safety, relief often does something cleaner. Your attention widens. You can think in full sentences again. Appetite comes back without shame. You do not feel indebted for existing. One state sedates you, the other restores you. You can separate the two states in close detail. Sedation says, do not ruin this. Restoration says you can tell the truth now. Sedation asks for compliance in exchange for calm. Restoration gives you enough steadiness to risk honesty. If the easier moment makes you less willing to name what happened, you are probably not in safety. You are in a temporary chemical truce. There is another scene worth keeping. Someone finally gives you the apology, concession, or softer tone you thought you needed. Your body melts so quickly that you start editing your own future. You decide not to bring up the old pattern because the moment feels too fragile. You decide not to ask the harder question because you do not want to spoil the peace. You decide not to make the boundary explicit because the warmth might disappear. The price of the relief is silence, and you pay it gladly because your system is drunk on the drop. You lose authorship this way. The mechanism does not only distort what you endure, it distorts what you are willing to say once the environment becomes bearable again. Your truth keeps getting postponed to protect the pause. Weeks later, you tell yourself the timing passed. What really passed was your access to the version of you who still believed the cost mattered. You should notice how often this pattern recruits language from religion, virtue, or self-improvement. Grace, patience, compassion, humility, discipline, those words can point to real strength. They can also become ceremonial masks for fear. When they are used to make you distrust your own witness every time pressure temporarily eases, they stop being virtues and start becoming anesthetics. You can use a hard but useful test here. When the pressure lifts, do you become more yourself or less? Do you gain speech or lose it? Do you become more precise or more foggy? Do you feel permission to examine the pattern or pressure to preserve the nicer mood? Safety can survive inspection. Counterfeit safety needs your gratitude to stay ahead of your memory. You will not find a real safe place only after you have been cut open. A real safe place does not need your nervous system at full alert in order to feel meaningful. You do not have to survive a mini collapse to appreciate being there. Your body may need time to trust that. But the delay in recognition belongs to the conditioning, not to the room. You can also watch self-betrayal dress itself as forgiveness. If you repeatedly accept the pause as proof, you will call your own memory bitter every time it tries to defend you. The record returns, your stomach tightens, the facts line up, and then one decent gesture appears and you start negotiating against your own evidence again. You become a skilled attorney for whatever interrupted the pain, even if it never stopped producing it. There is a scene almost nobody admits. You are alone after the pressure has passed. The lamp is low. The screen is dark. No one is telling you what to think. Still, you rehearse their defense for them. You explain their exhaustion. You explain the timing. You explain your sensitivity. Your body is already calm enough to betray the version of you that was trembling an hour ago. That is not closure. That is sedation crossing over into interpretation. You can spot shrinking thresholds here. Once relief becomes your proof, the amount of goodness required to win you back gets smaller every cycle. Less repair is needed. Less accountability is needed. Less consistency is needed. The body remembers how desperate it was for air, so it treats every cracked window like a miracle. Soon you are not asking for change. You are rewarding interruption. You should be careful where Stoic language gets abused. Endurance matters. Acceptance matters. Fate does not negotiate with your preferences. All of that is true, but Stoicism without discrimination becomes a tool for swallowing avoidable damage. Fate acceptance is not the same thing as thanking a bad structure for pausing. Strength is not learning to feel blessed by reduced pressure. Strength is keeping the standard even after the panic leaves. You do not need to become dramatic to break this. You need sequence. When relief hits, do not let it testify alone. Put it next to pattern. Put the soft moment next to the full record. Put the easier tone next to the repeated cost. If the only evidence for safety is that your body stopped screaming, you do not have safety yet. You have a quieter minute. You will feel how wrong a clean boundary feels at first if you were trained on relief. You say no without a long speech. You leave the room while the tone is finally nice. You stop volunteering to carry the load just because the pressure eased for a day. The body protests. It says, wait, be fair, maybe this time is different. That protest is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is withdrawal from the old chemistry. You can see defense working in tiny moments. A message arrives late with a soft tone after a hard week. This time you do not hand the whole past over to one pleasant sentence. Your chest still loosens, but you keep the record intact. You answer from facts instead of relief. The room may get colder when the old shortcut fails. Good. That temperature change tells you the softness was depending on your amnesia, or the pressure comes from inside. You finish the task. The surge of relief arrives. Usually that is the moment you would sign yourself back up for another round of private brutality, because the completion high makes the regime feel justified. Not this time. You let the body calm down, and then you ask a harder question. Why did finishing require self-erasure in the first place? What part of your life only feels acceptable after you survive it? The answer will show you where you have been mistaking reduced harm for a good life. You should not confuse this with demanding perfection from people or from reality. A hard day that ends is still a hard day that ended. A conflict that resolves is better than one that does not. Relief is real. Relief matters. The correction is simple and brutal. Relief tells you the pressure changed. It does not tell you the source became safe. You can save years with that distinction. It can stop you from returning to rooms that only know how to keep you through contrast. It can stop you from admiring systems that rent your own nervous system back to you in installments. It can stop you from calling self-abandonment maturity just because it is efficient. Every time you call relief safety, you hand your judgment to whatever hurt you least after hurting you most. This mechanism follows you into work, family, belief, ambition, and the private government you run inside your own chest. Now that you see the difference between a pause and protection, you get your witness back, and the trap loses its favorite disguise. If relief is the only reason you stayed, the danger never left the room. Subscribe if you want the diagnosis before the room finishes rewriting the record.